Hello everybody, welcome to what I think is part 8 in our little Planning Your Garden series. And today we're going to talk about some of those basic garden principles such as repetition and scale. And we're going to talk about texture. But I want to go over what we did last time so that we're all up to speed and on the same channel. We took our ideas and we started sketching them on graph paper, and we did things to scale. So we created a basic outline of what we wanted. We wanted trees, we wanted a bench, we wanted some shrubs. We then took this and created our winter diagram. This is what our garden is going to look like for winter. And it is to scale. We've got our arborvitae hedge, we have a maintenance walkway, we have some trees, we have shrubs, we have our bench. And it's all in scale. And we start with our winter interest first because this is the permanent stuff that sticks around all year long. Once we have our winter diagram, then we're going to take some tracing paper and lay that over the top and start designating areas of interest. And you can see where we have the red outline, that is where we're going to plant our fall blooming or good looking fall plants, all in the red area. Then we're going to take another layer, put that over the top. We can't plant necessarily where it's red, so we start doing some spring interest. So wherever you see the green, that's where we're going to plant spring blooming plants. Now, you might notice that our tree here, we said it was going to be a crabapple with rhododendrons underneath it. That's spring blooming. These were some azaleas, spring blooming. So we're just going to make everything that's spring in green. And then finally, over the top of that, blue is for summer. So every place you see blue is where I'm going to plant summer blooming perennials. Now, I am a heavy perennial person. You may want to do more shrubs or things like that. But for my garden, I do a lot of perennials. But this gives us 3 seasons of interest, and we already know exactly where we're going to plant fall blooming things, spring blooming things. So when you go to the garden center and you come home with something that blooms in the summer, you know that it's going to go in the blue areas. If you bring home spring blooming things, you know it's going to go into the green areas. But this is what's going to keep you on track for the 3 seasons of interest in your garden. I have no idea why in that last clip I kept saying 3 seasons of interest. We've designed 4 seasons of interest. We have summer, we have spring, we have fall, and we have winter. Now, before you go to the garden center and you start buying plants and just plunking them in these designated areas, there's some basic concepts that I think you would find very helpful in making your garden be a little bit more cohesive and inviting. We did our whole project using graph paper and tracing paper. If you can get on the internet and do something, go for it. More power to you. I'm not that savvy with internet. In fact, I just went on ChatGPT and tried my hand at a little bit of this. And this is what I came up with. This image took me about a whole week to create because I kept exceeding my daily ChatGPT free usage. Now, while I know that image is really pretty basic and it's not exciting at all, I think we can still use it to demonstrate some of the principles that we wanted to talk about today. Repetition is more than using the same plant over and over again. If you look at our example, you can see we have a white tree, we have a white bench, we have a white azalea. By having white in different areas of the garden, it makes you look from one white piece to the next. In this image from my garden, you can see I repeated yellow. I repeated yellow foliage and I repeated yellow flowers. Now this time of year, it might be yellow. Later in this season, you might find my whole garden scattered with different shades of purple. A garden is ever evolving and changing. I think you can tell from this image that there's something off proportion and scale-wise. This is why when we drew our initial diagrams, we did our homework and we designed things to scale. When planning your garden, it's important to remember the mature size of the plants that you're putting in. Unlike man-made objects like planters and benches, plants grow, and sometimes they can grow big, especially when we're talking trees and shrubs. So do your homework, make sure you take the mature size into consideration before you plant them. You can move a perennial. It's really hard to move a tree. Plant height is another important consideration. You may think you just put short things in front, tall things in back. I want to challenge you to think of vertical plants as little punctuation marks in your garden. Think things like foxglove or verbascum. If you place them in the front, especially if they're tall and narrow and you can see through them, they actually can start to act as a little accent plant, especially while they're in bloom. In this next series of images, I want you to think about foliage. I want you to think about the size of the leaves, the colors of the leaves, and the shapes of the leaves. Remember, flowers are fleeting. They only last 3 to 4 weeks. It's more important that you work around all the different shades of green and use the flowers as an afterthought. Foliage isn't just green. There's variegation. There's burgundy leaves. There's gray leaves with variegation. Mix it up. That's what makes gardening fun. Can you put two plants with the same texture next to each other? Sure you can. Here we have some of the yellow Japanese forest grass next to a daylily. And then to the far right, we've got our annual display of coleus. This area of my garden looks wonderful even when the daylilies aren't in bloom. Rhythm in the garden is about repeating the plants, materials, and elements, colors, and texture to create a sense of movement and harmony and visual flow. For example, I prefer when rounding the edge of a garden that the plants are all the same. Here I use Liriope. It calmly guides you around the edge of the bed. The spacing of these repeated elements controls the speed a person moves through the garden. Remember, regular spacing feels formal, wider or irregular spacing feels natural. Try to mix a bit of both into your design. Plants come in different shapes and sizes, and by mixing them up, that's just another element that you can use to create your own unique design. Want something a little more on the low maintenance side of things? Embrace the natural shape of the plant. Or you can get creative and create your own shapes. This multi-trunked river birch offers peeling bark in a wide vase-shaped form. A wild cherry tree has a slight weeping habit and very contorted branches. Some maples grow big and round. This one is more spade-shaped. This prairie fire crabapple grows very low and very wide, while this gladiator crabapple does just the opposite. It's tall and narrow. As we start picking plants to designate our seasons of interest, we're going to consider these concepts, but not just thinking about what plant goes next to each other, but by considering the garden as a whole. Have we repeated shape, form, texture? By doing so, we will make our garden more cohesive. Before you head to the garden center to grab things, take the time to evaluate what you want and what you need. If you're in need of inspiration, scroll through the internet. Make yourself a Pinterest board. Planning makes all the difference. If you don't plan your garden, you may become the victim of the #1 disease that all gardeners succumb to, plunkitis. What is plunkitis? That's when you come home with impulse plant purchases and you aren't sure where you're going to place them. So instead you just plunk them here and plunk them there. And that's what we're going to cover in our next video, avoiding the impulse and what to do if you can't, as well as how to combine plants. I hope you enjoyed today's video and you'll join me in the next one. If you can get out in your garden, get out there and have some fun. Take care, everybody, and remember, hold off on buying those plants until you make a plan.